Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode recap, review, and breakdown for The Boys Season 4, Episode 6, titled Dirty Business. And my goodness gracious me, this was definitely... This episode had quite a bit of dirty business in it, and I suppose we're gonna have to get into that because I feel like it made up the majority of the episode. So The Boys, really never fails to surprise me here with just how far they're willing to go. So let's just dive straight into this. Let's go through the events of the episode, chuck a little bit of theorizing and speculation in there. Leave a like on this video if you do go on to enjoy it, and of course, subscribe for more videos just like this. So right at the beginning, I just want to say that I feel like as much as I found this to be a ridiculous, entertaining episode of The Boys, I don't feel like it really furthered the plot in like a crazy way. I don't think, obviously, you have to have each and every episode be crazy plot-driven stuff. So like Homelander has flown right to the freaking Pentagon and walked in there and he's really stepped up the next stage of his super domination plan. Now, I'm not really expecting that because things did cook a little bit more in that direction this episode, but I just wouldn't say that this made leaps and bounds. It was more just like, okay, let's put that on the back burner and simmer away while we kind of let it cook just a little bit more this episode, but we'll kind of go a bit crazy with everything else. And I would love to know your thoughts on that. Do you feel like it didn't move things along enough? Also, certain things I think we could see coming in a way. So I guess to start off really with the very beginning of the episode, Butcher and Kessler were trying to get Samir to work on the virus that will kill Soups. Because when we do cut back to him later on in the episode, we see that he's very, very sick still. I think, that's also why he's putting such a quick timescale on Samir. Now, again, with my devil and angel comparison or analogy that I said last episode, I do like how we're seeing more of that with Becca being the good angel on Butcher's shoulder, but that was a good example of Joe Kessler's bad angel of Butcher trying to influence him to maybe go over a bit more to his diabolical side, because you had him talking about, what they did together in the past, because we all know there's this side that he's always kind of wrestling with, especially with the addition of his inner angel Becca voice. And this is when we get to the end of the episode, if I just continue this on here. So this is where we have Samir reveal that he can't do this. Like, he can't step things up with the virus to the next stage, because it's what they realized in the lab. To make the virus strong enough to kill Homelander, it would mean that it would evolve into something unstable, something airborne, very, very highly contagious, and super lethal to the point of basically it would cause a genocide to all those with compound V in their bloodstream. So this means not just, Homelander would die, but it would mean that there's good Soups like Kimiko to Ryan to Annie. The list goes on and on and on and on, who would completely bite the dust. And just to be a bit nitpicky here, I did kind of think to myself, like, hey, Samir, you've been tied up with your leg chopped off for a while now, and they've taken a few cracks at you to try and persuade you to, make the virus. You could have said this a little bit sooner, maybe. Now, I'm not saying it would have made a massive change of things, especially since we had Kessler kind of having a go at Billy, saying this is our silver bullet, maybe you should do this, and you can see that Billy's maybe thinking about it a little bit, but I'm just saying they could have had this revelation sooner, or maybe I guess it's just hard to believe that Samir wouldn't have come out with this. Little nitpick aside, this is where we also had the revelation. Well, it's not so much of a revelation to us who are already theorizing about it, but they did the reveal in the episode, and where, hey, you can see Becca, because we had Kessler basically telling the good angel to shut up. So that's when he realized that, well, obviously, I know Becca's not real because she's dead, but he didn't quite realize that with Joe Kessler, because I guess he forgot that he left him behind and that he died. So now Butcher realizes that he's just in his head, and we even had Kessler in this moment talk about how Butcher has this V'd up brain tumor, and the way he kind of said these lines here, he said that I killed Ezekiel for you. I am inside of you. I am you. So if Kessler is saying that Kessler killed Ezekiel for you, and we saw the little frickin' Baldur's Gate 3 cancerous V'd up cancer tumor tadpole come out of his eye and then munch on Ezekiel, I guess this, logically means that the Kessler manifestation is the V'd up tumor. But the thing is about that, what I'm struggling with is, why would the V'd-up tumor, if it wants to ensure its own survival, be okay with creating an airborne soup-killing virus that would obviously kill it? Maybe it is okay with that. I don't know. Where is this going to end up? I don't know if Billy will be able to go through with it. I think, don't get me wrong, they might push it as far as him creating the airborne soup virus or forcing Samir to do that. But will he truly go through with it? I don't necessarily think so. But I feel like there would be a sense of maybe an anticlimactic season finale if we get to the point where Butcher could do it again, kind of like, how Soldier Boy could take his blast onto Homelander and do everything they wanted him to do, but they didn't do it again. And I get that we need to get to season 5 for the Scorched Earth finale between Butcher and Homelander, but I guess if that doesn't happen, we're going to have to look forward to some of the other crazy things that could be happening this season, which obviously ramped up a little bit more in this episode, and that is Sage's plan. Now, just before we get into that, we do have a little bit of an aftermath with Huey and his mother scattering his father's ashes on the street. We also have Kimiko visit Frenchie, and, even with the end of the episode in mind, he's refusing visitation, which actually surprised me, because I said in my last episode review, I'm like, okay, is he really going to stay in now? And I guess that could still count, because, is he just going to be out the show? Like, really? Like, before the final season? Probably not. So Frenchie's probably going to get out somehow. I feel like I'm not thinking of everything, because I can't imagine him just having scenes from prison from here on out. It's sweet how Kimiko keeps trying to see him, but I just feel like it's only a matter of time before things move along in this storyline. Now, this is where things really kick off in the episode, because we have A-Train ring MM about how he really can't do this anymore. This is a bit of a reaction to the fallout of what happened to Cameron Coleman, who's now been replaced by Firecracker at the Vought News Network, which is just something else. I'm sure that's making her very, very happy, as we kind of find out later with the way she kind of thanks Homelander. But anyway, A-Train's freaking out, and, this is where MM gets informed about Homelander's soup army plan. So this is where they look into going to Tech Knight's party, and they want to use Web Weaver's costume to sneak in. And that moment when we had MM put the syringe in the web hole instead of the other hole, wow. And of course, MM got a web sling on his face, which I think was a bit of a callback to Herogasm, with how he opened the door and then, he got splattered in something else. So Huey's got the Web Weaver suit. His job is to go in there, bug the place, and also lure Tech Knight so they can get some information out of him. But this is where the situation, I'm like, damn, like they just keep getting into these situations where Homelander is there, like the plan goes sideways, and then the plan goes sideways again. But obviously we have Homelander and the Seven at this party. Oh, and Sage, something happened that I've been hoping would happen. I did say in previous reviews, in my criticism of Sage, long story short here, I was saying, look, I think she's an interesting character, but at the moment it feels like, at the time, it felt like a bit of a contrived thing, because Homelander knocked on her door, offered her the chance to, test out her, intellectual, crazy, soup brain abilities on a larger scale. Cool, but at least, with Soldier Boy and even Stormfront, they had a lot of historical context as to what made me believe that they are the type of characters they were, and were okay with doing the things that they were doing in present day. Now, I did say, hopefully we get that with Sage a little bit later on, because at that point in time, again, Homelander knocked on her door, and it was just like, hey, yeah, I'll sign up and condone Todd's murder with baseball bats and all of this stuff. And we finally got what I wanted. I'm really happy about this, because I feel like her backstory here, and where she detailed when she was 11 years old, her grandmother was dying of leukemia, and she stayed up for 3 nights, and she discovered a cure. And when she actually presented this information to the doctors, they just kind of laughed at her. They didn't care, and her grandmother died in a lot of pain. She then says she could cure cancer, reverse global warming. She has the intellect to do so. She's probably already figured it out, but she doesn't care to tell anyone, because what's the point? Humans are the animals, and feck them all, as she says. So, and when she said that last line, her face and her lip was just quivering with anger, and it was just said with such rage. So you can tell that she has an utter disdain for humanity. I mean, you could always kind of tell that with what she was okay with, but I felt like this was the missing piece that I needed to kind of believe the motivation for why her character's so okay with getting to the point of what we learn from Tech Knight in just, a few minutes time. Now, as Huey goes in there, not only are the 7 there, but Neuman is there, and I did feel like in this moment, I wrote down in my notes, I'm not gonna lie, it still felt a bit obvious to me. I feel like Neuman would have been able to tell, and this is where Tech Knight takes Huey down to his tech cave. All of this is obviously a lot of references to Batman. I mean, we even hear bats as they enter the tech cave, but when the camera turns around, it's just a dungeon. Again, I'm gonna have to be careful with how I talk about this and show stuff on the screen because of, as I've said before, the boys always get to me here with the YouTube guidelines. And, more references. My freaking basically version of Alfred here, raised me ever since I lost my parents. And he's like, that's correct, Master Knight. So what we saw next, I don't even know how to talk about it. We had a German chocolate cake for the texture against, a certain pair of cheeks. It just gets crazier. Like, as I'm looking at my notes here, Ashley arrives and gets involved with certain activities, and Ashley is nasty. My God. Huey doesn't know the safe word, which, by the way, Webweaver, his safe word is Zendaya. The boys is just really on the nose here, and I just picture if Zendaya is a fan of The Boys, her reaction to, and Tom, like maybe they're watching it on the couch together, Tom Holland and Zendaya watching The Boys season 4 episode 6 and seeing that. But this is where things get a bit more complicated because we have Firecracker start to realize that she's being left out. The 7 are just using her, and for sure she knows it. But this is when Annie bumps into her, and she even apologizes to her, and it really did seem like to me that she was actually buying it. I'm not saying she could have been flipped round, but right before Annie drugged her, it looked like, hey, maybe I don't know what would have happened, but she was registering that, and I think that sincerity is all she wanted to hear, and it could have been the right moment because she was struck down with a bit of vulnerability with being rejected by Homelander in that moment and Sage, that in another timeline, what if, she took that apology and something could have come from it? Maybe it's just a bit of wishful thinking, but obviously then getting drugged by Annie in that moment just reinforces, oh yeah, hey, screw you, like, I don't care if I'm being used, I'm just gonna suck up to Homelander anyway. So she's now just further emboldened to suck up to the 7 despite knowing that they couldn't really give a crap about her. So this is where we have Tech Knight realize that it's Huey through pulling off the mask, and he kind of wants to create some new holes and, fill in the blanks. MM and Kimiko walk in on Sage on their way to Huey, and she starts toying with MM. He ends up shooting her in the head, but it's all okay because her brain regenerates. And in this moment, it looks as though he was having a heart attack because you can tell how much he's trying to regulate his stress with, like, the mindfulness apps. And before I forget as well, we had A-Train help. I feel like things were a bit convenient this episode. It's great that Kimiko didn't get noticed. Either way, A-Train does get convinced to take MM to the hospital when she pulled out a book, which, again, conveniently here was titled For the Sake of His Daughter, which obviously pulled the heartstrings of A-Train, who's really trying to do good for his nephews and his brother. So he ended up taking him to the hospital. But yeah, like, the more I'm thinking about it, like, the scene here at Tech Knight's house party or whatever it was, there was a lot of convenience happening, especially when you consider that Homelander was wondering, like, where has everyone been? What's going on to Sage when she returns back kind of dumbed down with her brain because it's regenerating with a bullet hole in it, I guess. And I feel like if Homelander was wondering about that, sure, you can make the argument that he was entertaining the people there and he wants their support in the times to come and stuff, but I feel like he would have scanned the place. He would, if he was that pressed about what's going on, where's A-Train, where's this person, where's that person, he would have investigated a bit more. So the writing of this episode, I do have to admit, I feel like there's some parts that I just struggle to believe. And this is where, because Sage is the one with the plan, really all the details who would have really mapped it out for everyone there, Homelander has to pitch what he wants to do himself. I mean, he starts off with saying Robert Singer's the greatest threat that the nation has ever faced, to the point of once he's in office, they want to more or less invoke the 25th Amendment, take Robert Singer out of his presidency, and this is where you had some questions that Homelander just wasn't prepared for. So, okay, what about the Justice Department? What about the military's reaction to that? What about the shock to the market? And it's like, Sage has the details, and yeah, she wasn't quite available for that. So this is where we had Neuman step up, and just notice how humiliated. You could see how humiliated Homelander was, which was interesting because you know that Homelander and Neuman don't get on as well. So obviously with Homelander's plans for what Tech Knight can offer, how on board is Neuman really going to be with this? I mean, I know we had that meeting previously with Sage and Homelander and Neuman at that disastrous ice skating rink musical thing that happened, but I think she's just trying to get in there and maybe appease Homelander here and there, but will she really give him everything that he wants? Maybe not. So there's going to be quite a bit of odds between them two, even if things and big events like this come to pass. But this is where the boys learn, after torturing Tech Knight, even though he kind of enjoyed it, well, what's the one way that you can torture him, a billionaire? And that's where the previous sidekick escapes, shows them the laptop with all of his bank accounts on it, and they start donating to charity. And he reveals to them, bottom line here, that he made a deal with Homelander to use his prisons to the point of putting his freaking dissidents into that of prison camps, which is just nuts. And we already knew, obviously, as the audience, Homelander's ambitions, but to hear like words like that being chucked around, and you know, anyone who disagrees with what the new authority is saying, you're going to end up in a camp like that. It is next level. Now, I don't know if this means that because they've taken out Tech Knight, who are they going to go to next to ensure that they get their prisons for their plans? I'm not sure if the boys really thwarted that, and will this push Billy to make sure that the virus is made into an airborne one once he learns of these details? It was quite interesting, actually, how he wasn't involved in these plans, and Annie herself said that they could have actually used Butcher in this mission. But this is where, at the end of the episode, I mean, aside from the Butcher stuff that we already covered, Firecracker approaches Homelander, talks about Starlight at the mansion. He talks about the leak. This confirms to Homelander even more that Cameron Coleman wasn't the leak. So I really do, I know I keep saying it, but A-Train's time is speeding up. And it's going to be a messy one, because Homelander's first going to go to Sage, because now he knows that Sage knew that it wasn't Cameron Coleman. And then, I guess, the avalanche is going to start to fall for A-Train, especially with, when he dropped off to hospital, and you had that kid, the way he looked at A-Train, inspired, and that's all I think A-Train wants to appear like to kids like that, especially mirroring kids like his nephew. Either way, back to Firecracker. She starts to undress herself. He's not interested in that, but she's been planning for something that he could be interested in. So after taking a series of drugs that could allow her to produce a certain substance that Homelander keeps locked away in his refrigerated drawer, let's just say after a bit of a spray on Homelander's face, he's hit the jackpot. Absolute jackpot. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know where to go from here. I guess maybe now Firecracker's going to feel important, but, like, the only use you have now is to feed Homelander. I really wonder where her character's going to go. I guess she just wants to feel useful, and now she feels useful to the most important man that she needs to feel useful to. I don't know, but my God, that was a scene. That was a scene. So all in all, guys, end of the episode. I kind of repeat what I said at the beginning in terms of how things haven't moved along like a crazy amount, but we did get little dribbles of information that make things more interesting, such as the prison camp plan. Obviously, you know, the official appeal to those in power, if you will, that, hey, we're planning, you know, invoking the 25th Amendment. So that's in motion. Neuman secured a place a bit more there. Homelander now knows that the leak wasn't Cameron Coleman. There's going to be a bit of backlash with that. Sage is probably gonna actually end up giving up A-Train, but what will that mean for Ashley and A-Train, other than maybe their death? But will it really be that straightforward? And of course, will the airborne virus be made? I think they are gonna go that direction, but will the plug be pulled? That is the question. Probably not, because, I mean, you know, otherwise the soups will die and the show will be over. So while I did enjoy this episode, it did feel a bit middling in comparison to other ones. I think next week's episode will be a lot more significant in terms of like the main plot. But what did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of my thoughts. Any additional theories that you can chuck in there with some of the main things to come out of this episode. But if you got this far, I would really appreciate a like. If you did enjoy the video, consider subscribing for more videos just like this. But I'm going to love you and leave you now. So again, thank you for your time. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you fellow boys in the next video. Goodbye.